Can paying off a debt lower your credit score? Did you know that FICO uses top-secret scorecards to calculate your credit score? And does selling your home generate capital gains tax? We'll answer these questions and more on this, the 112th episode of the DoughRoller Podcast.
Welcome to the DoughRoller Podcast, where the best thing money can buy is financial freedom. We help you make more, spend less, and invest the rest. And now your host, Rob Berger.
Whether you're just starting out, buried under a mountain of debt, or well on your way to financial freedom, this is the podcast to help you take your finances to the next level. Hey, everybody, this podcast is sponsored by Betterment, the most preferred automated investing service. Betterment has cutting-edge technology to optimize returns, minimize taxes, and save you time and money. Join over 34,000 customers who have already streamlined their portfolio management at betterment.com/roller. That's betterment.com/ROLLER. So I was thinking about the last podcast, DR111, and at the end of that, for the tip of the day, I mentioned the tool Acorns. So if you don't know what that is, just check out the podcast 111. But I was thinking about that product, and it seems to me as if it's a great idea for young investors. Young investors, those say 18 to 25. Folks that should be investing, even if it's a few dollars every month. I think a product like Acorns can make it fun, can make it interesting. It makes it very mobile because that's effectively what it is, a mobile app that allows you to round up purchases and invest that difference. And, is it a perfect long-term solution for investing? No, probably not. It has some expenses. They're relatively low by robo-advisor standards. But, as I think about it for my own children, I think, what a great way to maybe get them interested in investing at a young age. So I haven't talked to either one of them yet about that product, but I'm going to. And it occurred to me after I recorded the last podcast, I kind of wanted to mention that. If you have children in that age range, I'd be curious if you look at that product and think, hey, maybe this is a way. You start to talk about Vanguard, Betterment, all these things that we all know are, Fidelity, great tools. But how do you get an 18-year-old interested in that? Now, some are, that's great. But for those that aren't, I wonder if Acorns is a solution. Well, anyway, just a thought about the last episode. On to today's episode, we're going to be talking about what happens when you sell your home for tax purposes. That's our quick question of the day from a listener named Belinda. The main topic happens to be about your credit score. And we have a listener who wrote in who paid off a debt and her score went down. We're going to try to unravel that one and figure out what happened. And then our tip of the day, it's a simple one. That's all I'm going to say for now. Okay, let's get started. The first email comes from a listener named Belinda. She writes in, she says, if we live in a more expensive house now than when we retire, should we pay off the mortgage? Will it be a capital gains expense? Thank you. That was her email. Well, Belinda, the first question I've already covered. That was in podcast 108. I'm just checking that to make sure I've got the number right. Yes, indeed, you do. So you just go to DoughRoller.net/podcast 108, and I give you the factors I would work through to decide whether I should pay off my mortgage or not. In that case, it was pay off my mortgage or invest. You may have pay off your mortgage or do something else with it. But I think those factors still apply. It's interesting. With Belinda's question, it's specific to the fact that when she retires, they're going to do what I think a lot of people do, and that is downsize or perhaps just move to a less expensive area. I think that is absolutely a relevant factor to consider your future plans. I don't think it's the only factor, though. I don't necessarily think most people probably won't make the decision based entirely on that issue alone. But I do think it's an important factor. But the thing I wanted to focus on today in Belinda's email, and I've already responded to this to her. We've had an email exchange, but is the capital gains expense. And what I'm going to actually do an entire episode on this issue because there's a lot of nuances to the taxes you'll pay, if any, when you sell your home. But here's the one thing I want to mention. So you probably know that there is an exclusion if you qualify. It's your primary residence. You meet the use requirements, which means you've lived in the home 2 of the last 5 years. So you've met that requirement. There's an exclusion from capital gains of $250 for singles, $500,000 for those married filing jointly, right? Most people, I think, are familiar with that. The thing that I think trips people up is they often think that they have to take the sales price that they get when they sell their home and subtract their mortgage balance. That's not how you figure out your capital gains. It's the sales price minus, by the way, all the expenses that you pay to sell your home, less your cost basis, your tax basis in the home. That's how you figure out what your capital gains are, and then apply the exclusion, the $250 or the $500. And figuring out your basis, the starting point is what you paid for your home. That's your basis. Now, it can go up, right? Let's say you added an addition to the home, or you remodeled your kitchen, or you added a deck. Capital improvements to the home increase your tax basis, which is one of the reasons it's so important to keep all those receipts. So that can increase your tax basis. But the thing I wanted to kind of focus on today is that it's not your mortgage balance. That doesn't determine your basis. You could pay your mortgage all the way down to nothing. Your basis would not be zero in that case. Now, again, I'm going to have a future show that goes into this in more detail. If you're just dying to get into the details now, I've got two resources for you, both from the IRS. The first, IRS Topic 701. You can Google it. It'll come right up. IRS Topic 701, sort of a high-level overview of this. All of the nit and gritty and the details, IRS Publication 523. IRS Publication 523. That's what you need to look for. Just Google that, and you will have a lot of reading. It goes through all of the details. Okay, now on to the main topic of the show. This comes from a listener named Lakeisha. She writes, I have a question. I think I know the basics about my credit and credit report, but I recently paid off my car loan, and then in parentheses, which I thought was a good thing. But according to credit.com, it dropped my score by 22 points. Can you explain why that is? I thought paying off debt was a good thing. Well, I can only imagine how frustrating that is. You have paid off a debt. That is a good thing. It's, in fact, a great thing. It's got to be a good feeling to have that car loan paid off, regardless of what happens to your credit score in the short term. Paying off debt is absolutely a very good thing. But, if you're monitoring your credit score, particularly if you're looking to buy a home or refinance a mortgage, 22 points can mean a big deal when it comes to a home loan. I mean, 20 points, a swing of 20 points, depending on exactly where you are, can move your rate by a quarter point, easy. And, over, the life of a mortgage, that can be thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, depending on how much you've borrowed. It is a big deal, and it can be frustrating as you monitor your score from month to month to pay off a loan and see the score drop by 22 points. Now, what I'm going to try to do in today's show is walk through 7 things, and there are more. This is not an exhaustive list, but 7 things that can cause your score to change from month to month. I can't, in Lakeisha's question, I can't, obviously, I don't have any insight into her credit file, her credit history, all of her credit cards, utilization, all of that, to know exactly why her score dropped. And frankly, even if I did, I might not know the exact reason why her credit score dropped. The folks at MyFICO give us a lot of information about how they calculate credit scores, but the actual formula is a trade secret. It's like the formula for Coca-Cola. They will not give you all of the details. That's how they make their money. Now, if you want to hear from the credit expert at FICO, you can listen to my second podcast, DoughRoller.net/podcast2. That's where I interviewed Tom Quinn from FICO, a very good and enlightening interview. So, but that being said, there's still only so much that we know about the nitty-gritty of how your credit score is calculated. We know a lot, but we certainly don't know everything. And so trying to evaluate exactly why a score goes down by a few points or up by a few points from month to month is a very difficult thing to assess. So what I want to do, though, is walk through at least 7 of the things that I think can change a score from month to month. Again, it's not an exhaustive list. Then I'm going to offer a couple of tips for those that are monitoring their score. Particularly, I think this becomes really important when you're trying to buy a home, and maybe you're going to buy a home in a few months, 6 months, a year, and obviously your credit score is really, really important. So that's what we're going to do today. So here we go. So let's walk through the seven things. Again, not an exhaustive list. Some of these will be familiar to you. I think some of them may be new to you. So let's start with one, aging of negative items on your credit report. So what does that mean? So, there are certain negative things that, of course, affect your score, whether it's a bankruptcy, a foreclosure, late payments, things like that. As these events age, as they get older and move into the distant past, they still may affect your credit score. They still may be reflected in your credit report, but they have a lesser impact on your actual score. So as these items age, all other things being equal, your score can go up. And this isn't always smooth. Sometimes they age month to month. It doesn't have any effect, and then they kind of go over a certain time period that for whatever reason FICO finds significant, and you can see a nice bump. And then they kind of stay that way, and they age and they age and they age, and then they go over another one, and you get a bump. Again, it's very difficult to isolate any one of these things because there's a lot of different things happening with our credit files every month. But as these negative items age, your score can go up. Number two, changes in revolving credit balances. So this is a tough one, particularly those that pay off their cards each month. Your balances, though, can change from month to month as you use your card, whether you're paying off your balances in full or maybe you're not. But as your balances go up, your credit utilization goes up. So credit utilization is simply taking the amount of your debt on a credit card divided by your credit limit. So if you just had one credit card, let's say you owed $5,000 on it, and your limit was $10,000. Well, you have a credit utilization of 50%, $5,000 divided by $10,000. And FICO looks at credit utilization both on a card-by-card or revolving account by revolving account. You may have a line of credit, for example, as well. But they also look at it as an entire picture, your entire revolving credit balances. And they calculate this credit utilization. The lower the utilization, the better. Tom Quinn had said, I believe he said 30% or lower, and even better if you get it to 20% or lower. But the thing is these revolving balances can change from month to month. As they do, it changes your credit utilization. And if it goes up over a threshold that FICO finds significant, it could drop your score. If it goes down by a certain amount, and particularly if it crosses a threshold that FICO finds important, it could increase your score. All right. Number three, age of accounts in your credit history. Obviously, as you get older and your history with accounts age, that is a positive factor for your FICO score. And they don't look at just your oldest account; they also look at the average age of your accounts. But as that ages, all other things being equal, that helps you because from FICO's perspective, you have more experience handling credit. So that could cause your score to go up a little bit in any given month. Number four, changes in the FICO formula. They change their formula periodically, and I've discussed this in the past. They have different versions of the FICO formula. They're constantly trying to improve their formula to make it a more accurate indicator of credit risk. And so they make changes from time to time, and it causes them to look at different factors, weigh them differently, add different factors. And so that could be another reason is a change in the FICO formula. Fifth reason, applying for new credit. We know that inquiries, hard pulls on your credit report can have a negative impact on your credit score. Generally, it's the least significant factor. That's what the folks at MyFICO tell us. But it's still a factor. So you may have applied for a new credit. Maybe you haven't even used it yet. You just got a new credit card. It's come in the mail. You haven't charged a thing. But the fact that you've applied for a new credit could lower your credit score. Number six, and this one may be new to a lot of you, scorecard hopping. What in the world is scorecard hopping? So here's the deal. FICO doesn't simply lump every consumer into the same pot and evaluate us all equally. They put us in what they call different scorecards. So and let me give you an example. And by the way, FICO reveals very little about this. I mean, they discuss the existence of these, but they give very little detail. But one scorecard that I think many people believe exists is a scorecard for those folks that have declared bankruptcy. So you're put in a we'll call it a bankruptcy scorecard. right? There may be scorecards based on the credit history that's available. So if you've got just 0 to 3 years of credit history versus someone that might have 20 to 25 years, they could have a scorecard, and this is related to what they call thin files, where there's just not a whole lot of information, pardon me, about the consumer. So they have different scorecards, and there are limits on these scorecards. So you could be in a scorecard where it is impossible to have a perfect credit score of 850. Impossible. I don't know this. Again, they don't reveal a lot of the details, but my guess is if you're in the bankruptcy scorecard, it is impossible for you to have a credit score of 850. Again, that's just my best guess. But here's the deal. You can move from one scorecard to another. Eventually, that bankruptcy is going to fall off your credit report, and that will move you to a different scorecard. Or perhaps you have very little credit history, but as you get more credit history, you can move to a different scorecard. Now, the interesting thing about this is that when you move to a new, and let's consider, for lack of a better word, a better scorecard. For example, the bankruptcy falls off your credit history, and that moves you from the bankruptcy scorecard to some other scorecard that we would all agree is probably better than the bankruptcy scorecard. Here's the thing. I have read, again, FICO, as far as I know, FICO's never confirmed this. But when you do that, they call that scorecard hopping. You move to a different scorecard. Even though it's a quote-unquote better scorecard, your credit score can actually get a little lower as a result of that change, because maybe you were in the bankruptcy scorecard, but compared to other people in that scorecard, you were doing really well. When you scorecard hopped to that better scorecard, now you're compared to a different group of people, and maybe now you're not quite at the top now, because you're being compared to people who maybe had better success managing their credit. Now that's a short-term thing, and it's going to happen, and you're not going to know. You're not going to get a letter from FICO that says, "Hey, congratulations, you've moved from the bankruptcy scorecard to the people with 5 years of credit history scorecard." That's not going to happen. You're not going to know. But it could affect your credit score. Of course, you could, I guess, scorecard hop down depending on what happens in your personal circumstances. But they're out there. And if you want to Google scorecard hopping, you can read a whole lot of stuff. And actually on the MyFICO forums, there is a thread that discusses these scorecards and tries to identify them. They say, well, there's 10 of them. Now they think there might be 12 of them. We don't really know, but they exist, and they can affect your score from month to month. The seventh and final thing that I'll mention is so important, and that's late payments. We might think that one late payment, 30-day late payment, is not a big deal. It's a huge deal. It can significantly affect your credit score. A late payment stays on your credit file for up to 7 years. FICO's recently made some changes about when there's a dispute and you get, maybe you get sued or whatever, but you eventually resolve the debt. It can come off your credit report or not affect your credit score for that long of a period of time. But generally, late payments can affect your score for a very long time. So even if you're doing everything else right, you paid off the car loan, you're managing your credit cards, but you just pay your student loan late, it can have a significant negative impact on your credit score. So if you're monitoring your score and maybe you're looking to buy a house, your score is important, boy, you got to make those payments on time. They can have a huge impact on your credit score. Now, there you go. There's 7 things. Hopefully you found some things in there that are new to you. Some of you, use credit score junkies out there could probably teach me a thing or two. So if I've missed something that you think is real important, feel free to shoot me an email, dr@DoughRoller.net, and I'll mention it in a future show. But those are just some of the things, I think probably some of the more significant things that can affect your score from month to month. Now, I didn't want to stop there because all that can kind of get discouraging. So if you're monitoring your score or you think you should, maybe you're trying to buy a house, what should you do? So let me give you 3 tips. The first one is absolutely check your credit report. You can get your credit report for free. Just go to annualcreditreport.com. You get your report from each of the 3 major credit bureaus. Check it for errors. I mean, one of the reasons your score can go down unexpectedly is there's some misinformation on your credit report. Happens all the time. It's far more common than you might think. So if you've seen your score drop and you're scratching your head trying to figure out why in the world that happened, check your credit report. That's the first thing to do. It's free. It's easy. You can get it online, and I check mine a couple of times a year from one from each of the 3 credit bureaus. It's an important thing to do. The second thing you can do is use services that provide what I call educational scores. These are scores, they're not calculated using the FICO formula. They're calculated using a variety of other credit scoring formulas. But these services do an excellent job of educating you about your credit score. And one of the things that they do is they tell you what's hurting your score and what's helping your credit score. It's a really neat thing to look at, and it can help you figure out what's going on and what you need to improve. There are 3 that I recommend. I think they're the 3 major ones: Credit Karma, Credit Sesame, and Quizzle, Quizzle. Credit Karma, Credit Sesame, and Quizzle. They're all free. You don't need a credit card. I've used them all. They're very easy to use. They have great graphics and all this great visual sort of educational widgets, I guess you'd call them, when you log into your account, if you create them with any of these services. And they just do a great job of educating consumers on their scores and what helps and what hurts them. True, it's not your FICO score. People criticize them for that, which is fine. I actually did a comparison, and I found that they're generally pretty accurate. The other thing I'll add to that is there are countless FICO scores. There is no one FICO score. There are different FICO formulas. The information comes from different credit bureaus. You have multiple FICO scores. And again, that's not a criticism of FICO, it's just a reality. So anyway, that's the second thing I would do. I would pick one of them, use all 3 of them if you want. Now, you can go directly there. I do have affiliate links for each of these, which means if you were to use my affiliate link, I get a small, and I think it's pretty small, but a small commission. You don't have to use them. Whenever I mention an affiliate link on this show, I make a point to tell you it's an affiliate link because I think you have a right to know. For each of those, it's just DoughRoller.net/Credit Karma, DoughRoller.net/Credit Sesame, DoughRoller.net/Quizzle. That will redirect you through my affiliate link to them. If you use that, I appreciate it. You don't have to. You can go directly to them. Whether you use my affiliate link or not, I think those are good sources. I've used them all, and I like them. The third thing I would do, and this is particularly true as you get nearer to actually, say, buying a home, you want to see your FICO score, and you do that by going to My FICO. There's some costs involved. It's not particularly expensive. They have sort of credit monitoring service that you can continue to use on a monthly basis if you want. But that's how you would get your FICO score. Again, if you're a year out, 2 years out, I just don't think it's necessary. Although you can. That's another option. Some people prefer to do that. That's perfectly fine. But certainly as you get closer to using that credit score for something important, I think you probably want to see your FICO score. Again, I have an affiliate link for that, DoughRoller.net/MyFICO. If you use that, I'm grateful. Again, you don't have to. You can go directly to MyFICO if you prefer. So there you go. Those are my thoughts on the email. And I know credit scores, particularly if you're trying to save up for home and all that, incredibly frustrating. Sometimes it probably feels like your score is just never going to improve, but it will. If you continue to do the right things, make your payments on time, continue to reduce the balances on your credit cards to get your credit utilization as low as possible, hopefully below 30%, if not below 20%. If you do those things, apply for credit only when you absolutely must, you will start to see your credit score improve. Okay, now on to the tip of the day. This was an interesting one. This is a company that I'm familiar with. Actually, it's a bank. You think a tip of the day is a bank? Yeah, it's a bank. I'm familiar with this, and I've actually met them at the Financial Bloggers Conference that I attended in New Orleans earlier this month, and it's called Simple. I told you this tip was simple. That's the name of the bank, simple.com. It's an online bank. So here's the thing. It is very simple. They have just a checking account. That's it. You can't get a savings account. You can't get a certificate of deposit. They have a checking account. And with it, you don't get checks. It's a checkless checking account. Now, you can actually issue a payment online, and they will send a check for you. So in a way, you can kind of write checks. But it's not a traditional bank in the sense where you get a checkbook, and there's no branches. It's totally online. But there's no overdraft, no minimums, no monthly fees. There are over 55,000 fee-free ATMs available. But here's the other thing: is they try to bake budgeting into the banking app online so that you can do some budgeting as part of your banking. And I thought that was kind of neat. And so I thought I would mention it to you. Again, I don't bank there. I have no relationship with them. So I've never used it. But I think they have a pretty neat product. You can also get a simple Visa card, obviously a debit card, to use. So I thought it was a pretty neat idea, and I like their website, and I wanted to mention it to you. So there you go. That's the tip of the day. If you're looking for a different kind of bank, well, Simple might be for you. If you've used that bank before, I'd love to hear from you. Let me know what you think. Shoot me an email at dr@DoughRoller.net. Hey, I appreciate you listening today. You can get the show notes to this episode. Just go to DoughRoller.net/podcast 112. That's podcast 112. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, just shoot me an email, dr@DoughRoller.net. I read every one and I respond to every email. Hey, until next time, remember, the absolute best thing money can buy is financial freedom.